Hey everybody, I'm Amanda with DevExpress, and welcome to today's webinar, ASP.NET, Connecting Your Site to the Cloud, presented by DevExpress Technical Evangelist Don Wibier. In this webinar, see how to manage and embed files stored on Azure Blob Storage, Dropbox, and Amazon S3 storage in your ASP.NET websites with our brand new cloud providers for the ASPX File Manager. Thank you for joining us. I will now hand things over to Don.
Hi everybody. A couple of months back, I was composing a test project for a new webinar which involved the ASPX File Manager and its custom file system provider system, which allows you to create your own virtual file system. And I thought it'll be cool to do a webinar about creating a file system provider which connects to Dropbox. So Dropbox has a pretty well documented API which works with JSON over HTTP, and it was pretty okay to set it all up. And the file system provider has all the methods that you would need, and all the features that are in Dropbox. They can be used by implementing certain methods on the file system provider base class. So I set up the test project and I had a couple of questions, and so I headed over to my ASP.NET team and asked them a bit about a couple of things that I wasn't sure about. And they said they saw the demo and they thought, okay guy, this is pretty cool stuff. So you know what? We're going to implement it for our next 14.2 release. And that's exactly what I've done. And they threw in a couple of extras because we were also able to connect to Azure Blob Storage as well as Amazon S3 Cloud Storage. So that was very cool, and that's also what I'm going to present today on how easy it is to set it all up. But first, why should you store files in the cloud? Well, there are a couple of things that you might want to do with those files stored in the cloud. And the first is you can make use of the content delivery network which is provided by such a storage provider. All the files can be accessed by a specific URL which points to the specific storage provider. For instance, if you connect to Azure, Azure will provide you with an URL which will display or download the file. And that means, for an end user, the page of your website will be loaded much faster because there are several servers involved serving your content, and besides that, those cloud servers are fully optimized for static content. So yeah, that's just to get a better impression on your site. Another thing is with a number of cloud providers, and we all know Dropbox. Dropbox has this little tool which allows you to drop a file on your local file system and it will silently be uploaded in the background. So you don't need to open up a browser and use the upload control to upload a really huge file through HTTP. And if your network connection breaks when uploading a file through HTTP, then Dropbox is able to recover. So that is also another cool feature to use. And obviously, there are a lot of people who are trying to access those files stored on the cloud providers. And those cloud providers, they obviously spend an entire team on preventing hacking and stuff like that. So your data is pretty much safe there, and you don't need to worry about that. Another thing which is quite nice, specifically if you have a bunch of media files or documents or I don't know, whatever, you don't need to worry about backups because the cloud provider is backing it up. And with some cloud providers you can do provisioning, so you can retrieve older versions and stuff like that. So yeah, if you've got a lot of media files or documents or whatever, it can be quite a task to back it all up. And you don't need to worry about it because that is all being taken care of by Azure, Amazon, or Dropbox, or any other party. So yeah, what can we do with it? Because it's all kind of nice, but what kind of scenarios can we think of? Well, for instance, one important thing, if you are running multi-instance high-performance websites, and that will mean that you will have 2 web servers with a load balancer, and you have user-added content. Then you might consider something like this, because if you have multiple websites running, multiple instances, and you upload a file to web server X, that doesn't mean that the media file is automatically available on web server XI. So in that case, it would be better to have like one storage facility to place your media files or your assets of the website, and yeah, now you don't need to deal with replication or synchronization or all kind of difficult stuff. Another thing, for instance, companies like law firms or recruitment agencies are basically document-oriented companies. So, I mean, law firms, they've got like files, you don't know how much, but it will probably pretty much. And also recruitment agencies, they will deal with resumes and contact information of candidates and maybe job descriptions of customers. And yeah, maybe they want to share those documents and they want to work locally with Word or some other tool, and they want to be able to access it over the website. Well, in that case, you can just make sure that that those files are being uploaded to the specific cloud provider, and they can be accessible by the web. Well, and again, if you have like companies who deal with a lot of media like photos or images or maybe even movies, I don't know, the upload of such files is probably more easy by using a tool to upload to the cloud facility and then access it from your website. So that is why I think it's pretty cool that we have this feature introduced now and that you can make use of that. So let's get started. And I should have corrected this phrase, because what we're first going to do is there are a couple of preparations that you will need to make to give your website access to any of those cloud services. So the preparations is something which is really important. It's not that difficult, but it's nice that you have seen how that works, so you can set it up for your own projects and you can start working with the cloud providers with the DevExpress file manager straight away. So for that, I will first go to Visual Studio. Okay, so I'm going to start coding anyway, because I'm going to set up a test project. And this project is going to use C#, and I'm going to use the new DevExpress 14.2 template gallery for that. Well, in case you have seen last week's webinar of Mehul Harry, who was demonstrating all the new features 14.2 related to ASP.NET, there is like a responsive web application template for MVC and web forms. I'm not going to use it right now because Mehul is giving another webinar next week about responsive web design, and he will go into this responsive web application, and it's also something worth looking at. I will keep it simple. I'll just start with an empty project. And the reason that I'm starting with an empty project is I will only need one page, but I'd like to have all my references set up correctly. So if we give it a couple of seconds, the project will be created. And if I'm correct, it should appear like right now. And I said the project template is completely empty because it doesn't even have a default .aspx, but all references of the DevExpress controls are set up correctly. So let me put in a new page where we will be experimenting. It will be a web forms page, and I'm going to call it default.aspx. All right, so there we are. I will now put in an ASPX file manager. Was it already in there? No, I was too fast. So there we are. Obviously I didn't do it correct, so let me put it inside this one. And I'm going to call it, yeah, I was way too fast, as you can see, because the double click function on my mouse is very sensitive. All right, so the file manager is here. I'll go to design view and I'm going to set a couple of things. So let me click the smart tag here, and because we are going to demonstrate that you can do whatever you like with the cloud storage, I'm going to put up a couple of properties here. So I want to be able to do multi-file uploads. I want to delete files and folders, copying, moving, renaming, and creating. That's at least what we need. And let me show you another cool feature which we introduced in 40.2. That is this new designer. And this designer gives you access to a couple of complex properties, in this case of the file manager, but you will notice that on other controls like the grid view, the menu system, etc., they all have this nice designer which gives you access to the complicated properties. So in this case, I'm going to set up another thing which are toolbar items. Another new feature of this file manager, we are now able to add the default buttons like create, rename, move, copy, but we are also able to add our own custom ones. So for that, I will first add the regular buttons, and if we have time, I'll show you how to use the custom buttons as well. I'd like the rename one, the move, copy, delete, refresh. Yeah, we could put in a download as well. Doesn't matter that much. And what we could do now is I could implement a custom button. For instance, let me name, I'm gonna make it a new group. Check this false, and I'm gonna call this local. I'll not put in any icons, though it is possible to use our icon selector for that. The command name is also local. And the group name, I'll call it FS from file system. I'm not going to do anything with this button right now, but I just wanted to show you how easy it is to add your custom buttons. And as you can see, the local one is already there. All right, we're now making sure that the application is working, and it will now be running on the local file system. And I didn't put in a home folder and stuff like that, so it will just display my entire web application folder, which is not the coolest thing to do on a production environment. But we will see that this file manager is working right now. I can switch to the different folders, stuff like that. So that's cool. So that was the first coding part. I'm now going to prepare my Azure environment by setting up a container, a blob container, and there are a couple of things that we need for that. So let me go to the properties of this file manager and let me show you what we're going to do. If you scroll all the way down, you will notice that there are a couple of settings concerning the cloud providers, which is the Amazon one, the Azure one, and the Dropbox one. So let me first close down my mail so we will not be interrupted. And if I open up the Azure properties, you'll see that we need a couple of things here, which is an access key, container name, and a storage account name. So how are we going to get those things? Well, let's head to Chrome. And as you can see, I've already signed on the Amazon one, but let me sign on here as well. Which will bring us to the main page of the Amazon portal, the Azure portal, I'm sorry. So we'll see a whole bunch of services on the left side, and I am, for this webinar, basically only interested in the storage facility. So I go to the storage. I've got a couple of things going on there, but I'm going to create a new storage account. So that is done by clicking the big plus, and it will make a couple of selections inside the menu already, and I'm going to go for the quick create. Well, here we need to specify a part of the URL which is used for the CDN, which I described earlier, because Azure is giving you the CDN functionality, and it will serve it from that URL. So that should be a name which should not exist yet. So in my case, I will do a DX webinar test. This indicates that it does not exist yet. You can also specify a location where the service would be hosted, and as you can see, there is one for everybody. And since I'm based in the Netherlands, I will select a European one, and I can either pick the west or the north. I'll just go for the north. Well, the step here is that you will need to pick a subscription, and you can have several, as you can see. I'll go for this one, and you can specify a couple of things concerning replication, and that is something I mentioned about making backups. Azure is able to replicate these blobs across different data centers, and that is the default behavior of the blob storage. So that means that it is geo-redundant. But you could also specify that it will be replicated to another machine inside the same data center, which would be locally redundant. And you could also have the possibility to have read access geo-redundant, and that means that it is only read-only, so you can't update. And then there is a zone redundant, which is another type of security, but I'll just leave it on the geo-redundant, which is the default setting, and that means that all replication and stuff that I was also mentioning earlier is being handled by Azure. So we're going to create the storage account, and after a couple of seconds it will be created. And we do need this name. So let me copy it while it's working and head back to Visual Studio, because the storage account name is the one that I've just copied. So we're going to paste it in here. There is another thing that we need to have, which is the access key. And the access key is like a secret encrypted value that you should not expose to anybody else, because as soon as you have the access key, you will have access to this container. So I'm just going to create one, and after this webinar I'm going to destroy this storage account anyway, so it doesn't matter right now. Well, as you can see, the storage account has been created, and here is a little button called Manage Access Keys. And here you will get two keys, a primary and a secondary, and you can use any of them. I tend to use the primary all the time, and by clicking the copy button, it will be copied to your clipboard. And this is not the entire key, so don't worry too much about it anyway. I go back to Visual Studio, and I'm going to paste in this key, and there you go again. Next, I go back to the Azure portal, because we need to do one thing. We need to set up the container inside the storage account. And that is done by clicking the storage account, go to containers, and as we could have expected, the storage account is no containers because I've just created it. So when I click this add button, I'm going to create a new container. And this container is also something, the name you should remember. So I'm going to call it DX demo, and I'm going to copy it. Also for this container, there are also a couple of access things. So you could leave it on private, so then it is not accessible from the outside. You could make it a public container, or you can make it a public blob. For this demo, it doesn't matter that much, so I'm going to leave it on private. And I'm going to hit OK. Well, the container has been created, and let me go back to Visual Studio and copy the container name right in here. So I've set up everything, so let's see what happens. As you can see, it is still displaying my local file system, and that is because I needed to set one more property. I did this on purpose, obviously. Let me see here. The file manager has a property called provider type, and with the provider type you can specify which file system to use. And there were already a couple of them. We had like the data source provider, and we had like the physical one, which is the one which is displayed right now. You could have a custom one as well, but the new ones are Amazon, Azure, and Dropbox. Well, we were now showing off Azure, so let's set it. And let me hit Control F5 again. And as you can see, my file manager is empty. Well, that's completely normal because we just created a container. So let us put in a couple of files that I will look up a couple of files, because I'm going to show you another feature which is new in the file manager. I have the Explorer window here, and I want to upload this image. Watch this. I'm just dragging it out of my folder right into the file manager, and you see it is uploading already. So if you wait a sec, it's now being processed. And look at that, there we are. So uploading works. Let me create another folder. So the folder has been created. Let me test if I can move this file. It's already selected this folder, so if I go back to this one, you'll see that it has been moved. Let me also try to rename the file. Excellent. So this is basically how simple it is to incorporate Azure Blob Storage in your website by using the file manager from DevExpress. And let me show you what's happened on the Azure side, because if I go back to the portal and I click this container, you'll see that my image is there. So this is actually the sign that the file has been uploaded. What I can also do is, if I go back to my browser and I go back to my file manager, I could also say I'm selecting 3 files. And look at this. It is just uploading the 3 files in one go. And I just drag them out of the File Explorer right into my browser window, and it's picking it up already. And if I go, in the meanwhile, if I go back to this container, you'll see that's being processed as we speak. And that is another cool feature of the file manager. So let us see, it's still processing, and there we are. And we create another folder because this was actually not in Thailand, but this was in Indonesia. And let me move that file to Indonesia. And again, it's being moved inside Azure Blob Storage. Let me put this one in there as well to make it complete. Yeah, I was not paying enough attention. And let me put that one in there as well. So as you can see, this is working just sweet, and we didn't do too much work for it except for setting up the container on Azure. So that is our first cloud provider that I wanted to show you. Let us go back to Visual Studio, because now I'm going to show you how to set up Amazon S3 storage, which is more or less the same as Azure, except it's got a different architecture and it works differently, but essentially we are dealing on the same way as you just saw with the Azure Manager. So for that, let me go back to the settings, and we've got a settings Amazon one. And as you can see, it is asking slightly different details, and I have to say that it is a bit more complicated to set things up in Amazon. So I'm going to show you, don't worry, but pay close attention because it goes in a couple of steps. So here, I'll leave Azure for what it is right now. I'm heading to Amazon. And Amazon has quite a bunch of services, as you can see. The service that we are interested in is the S3 service. And that is basically storage. So if I go to here, I'll get an overview. And as you can see, I've set up a bucket. And a bucket is the same as what we saw on Azure, but instead it's like a container. But they call it a bucket here. I'm going to create a new bucket. And I'm going to call that bucket DX test. Also for here, you can specify in which data center you want to host this or which location. I'm going to go for US standards and I'm going to create it. That is too bad because it already existed. So I'm going to name it DX done test 1, 2, 3. And that didn't exist. So the thing with these buckets is that you can set permissions on this. And those permissions are for the administrator, which is me. You're granted everything, but I want to do it nicely because I don't want to use my administrator account on the website to get things going. So that makes it a bit more trickier, but if you know how it goes, it's not too difficult. For that, I'm going back to the Service tab because I'm going to the Identity Management of Amazon. And for that, I'm going to create a group. I'm first creating a group. And I have one group assigned here, but I'm going to create a new one. And that group is called DX test. Creating that group. And now you can have a policy template, or you can create your own custom policies, or you can set no permissions whatsoever, but I want to use a policy template because I want to give users in this group access to the S3 storage. So here, if you scroll down, somewhere all the way down, there should be something, if I'm not mistaken, here. So you have two access rights. One is full access, one is read-only access. Well, since we are dealing with the file manager, I want to create files and I want to have it all. So I'm going to select this one. And this is how a policy document looks in Amazon. You could tweak it a bit, but I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to hit next. And I'm going to create the group, and the policy has been set. And we are almost ready to go. I'm now going to create a user, which I will drop inside the group that I just created. So that user will be DevExpress user. And this is also something which is an important step. If I create this user, you will have a one-time view at the security credentials. And this is important because you will need these things, but it will only be shown now. Once you hit close or download credentials, or you go further down the process, you will never be able to see these settings again unless you renew them. So what is a wise choice is to copy these credentials, head back to Visual Studio, and let me set in some server-side comments. It will be a bit lame to put in HTML comments because then people can actually see your credentials, and this will not be outputted. So here I've got them, and now I can safely continue. I will now head back to the I needed to add the group, the user in the group, that was it. So I'm heading back to the group. The DX test doesn't have any users. I'm going to say add, and this was the one that I just created. So add the user to the group, and we are basically ready to go. On the identity management, last thing that we need to do is head back to the S3 one, go to the bucket, and hit the properties. So here is my bucket, and I can set permissions here by saying add a bucket policy. No. No, I don't need to set up anything because I granted permission on the group. So that's why it is just a bit complex. It got me off my feet for just a second, but we are done with this bucket. I'm going to copy these things as well, especially the top two, because that's something we'll need in Visual Studio as well. So let me paste it in here. And while we're here, let's go all the way down, and I'm just going to use this in text mode. I'm going to head to Settings, Amazon. Let me see, we needed the access ID, we needed the bucket name, we needed the region, and we needed the secret access key. Close down this, and now we can do a bit of copy and pasting. So the access key was this one, copy that out. The secret access key is this one. I'm going to copy that here as well. The bucket name, very important. And the region is the US standard. Just copy it right out and put it in here. So now we've set up the Amazon one as well. I will not check you again, so I'm gonna put this one on the correct Amazon setting. So let's see our empty container. As predicted, the container is empty. Completely true, because we just created the bucket. So let's get my files again. And let me copy in this image here. And if we wait a sec, we'll see that it will be uploaded to Amazon S3. And there we are. Let me see if I can create a folder. And move out this image to the Thailand folder. Let me copy it. So it's now actually copying it inside the data center of Amazon. So it doesn't really matter how big that file is. It will not be outside of the data center. It will be processed internally. And if we watch the root folder again, you'll see that the same picture is there as well. And if we head back to the bucket in Amazon, we'll see that everything is created here as well. So the display of the S3 storage is a bit different as what you saw in Windows Azure, but it's basically doing the same. I've got a folder Thailand. There is an image in there. And there is also an image in the root. So that is everything what's needed to set up Amazon S3 storage for your media files. Let's head to the Dropbox one. And that's also needs a bit of introduction, because if I go, let me first go to Visual Studio and check what the settings are that are necessary. And then we're going to see how to get those. Settings Dropbox. Hey, that's only one. Can't get any simpler. So I'm going to quote this in. Dropbox works slightly different. Dropbox has an app console inside your account, and you will need to create an application inside the app console. You have to specify a couple of things there. And once that application has been registered, you will be able to get an access token, and that access token will be pasted inside this setting, and that allows us full access to the Dropbox folder, or at least that's depending on what you do while registering it. So let me head to my Dropbox folder, so you'll have a bit of a view what's in there, all kinds of stuff. We will go to these three little dots that will invoke a menu, and I will go to the developer section. And there are a couple of things with Dropbox. You can create a drop-in, and you can create something which facilitates the Dropbox API. And since we are not creating a drop-in, we are doing a file management, so we will use the core API for that. So that is that's what we need to choose in a minute. Here we have the app console on the left side, and if I click it, you will see that I have created a couple of applications which basically all do the same, but it doesn't matter too much. I'm just going to create another one, and I'm going to call that one. And here is the question that I was mentioning, and do you want to create a drop-in or an API app? Well, we are dealing with the API because we want to upload files. We want to do everything with the files, so we'll need access to the core API of Dropbox. So let me check this one. I want to have access to files and data stores. You could assign this application to its own folder, which will not allow you to go outside that folder from Dropbox, but I want to have it all, so give me all. Yeah, my app needs access to files already on Dropbox. Then you can also specify if you want to select all files or that there are only certain types that you want to use, for instance, text or images. But I still want to have it all, so give it all. And then the last thing is the name. So I'm going to name it DXDon123 to make sure that it doesn't exist. And let's create the application. Well, that's done in a couple of seconds. And as you can see, some stuff is being set up. You will also see an app key and an app secret. You might expect us to use that one, but that's not what we're going to use right now. We are going for the generated access token, which is a button which is mentioned here. And this means that this site is attached to a fixed Dropbox account. You could also decide to get access to the users to your website's visitors account, and then the visitor will need to approve it, just like you do on your cell phone. If you have like Dropbox app on your phone, you need to authorize it once, and that same mechanism can be done as well, but not in this demo. We're gonna bound one Dropbox account to this website. So let me copy this token, head back to Visual Studio, and paste it in. I will go to my provider type, change it over to Dropbox, and let us see what happens here, because this will take slightly longer, because what it's doing now, it's getting all my file information out of Dropbox, and you'll see a nicely populated. This was exactly what was in Dropbox when we just went to Dropbox. And as you can see, everything is in here. I don't have too much photos in there, I guess. Oh yeah, there is one. And I can just take it and do the same tricks that I did earlier. I can just move it to here. And what is obviously pretty cool is this file is in here, and there is something else in here as well with some images. If I now go to my File Explorer and I go to Dropbox, and I go to this images folder, you'll see that this image is there. Is that great or what? So if I head back to this one, and I'm going to delete it, let me get back. You see it? It disappeared here as well. If I would get like a file, let me see, from this folder, and I'm going to get this little guy, and I'm just going to paste it in here. Okay, it's already turned green. If I refresh, there it is. So this is something that I like the most, because I can just drag in files and I can access them on my website through this ASPX file manager. And yeah, I'd say that is cool. So that is the ASPX file manager with the cloud provider support. There is one other thing that I'd like to show you, and I will not demonstrate all of them, but I will just demonstrate one, because what we also have introduced is our upload control. it allows you to upload files straight to Amazon and Azure. We haven't implemented Dropbox yet, but that will be there soon. There were a couple of things we couldn't get our head around, but don't worry, we'll implement it. I will go on the same page to the file manager. Before we got any funny guys in the audience, let me delete this app so nobody is ripping my Dropbox. And let me put this one back on Azure. All right, so let me put in a file upload control. And head to the design. Okay, well, we've got one in the file manager, but here's a standalone one. And what we can basically do here is pretty much the same. We have like an upload storage, and you can pick either Azure or Amazon. So I can say Azure. And as expected, there are some Azure settings and some Amazon settings as well. So what we can basically do is just copy the things out of the file manager, these ones, and put them in here. I probably need to change it. This was it, Azure, like this, and Amazon settings, just like this. All right, so if I run this one, yeah, I was a bit too quick. Let me get this out of the way, and let me complete this once as well. So here we are again, and here's our standalone upload. So let me get this image, and obviously I didn't create an upload button. That's also pretty cool, because if I switch back to design, there are a couple of things that we can do here. I can say show an upload button, saves me some JavaScript, and do the drag and drop stuff, and give me a progress panel as well. It also has this nice designer that I was showing you earlier, and as you can see, we also have a nice syntax highlighted JavaScript editor implemented for doing your client-side events. I think that's a great addition to the controls, because I always had to do it like in the code, and it's, yeah, this is just nice. I'm not going to use it right now because everything I need is already set. So let's hit it again, and you'll see that the upload is here, but I can obviously also get this file and drop it here. I still think this is one of the coolest features. And if I now hit upload, it is being uploaded. And yeah, it was uploaded to Azure, and I set the provider also on Azure. So let me see what happens here. Here is Tess. What has been done, as you can see, is we have made the name unique to make sure that we are not overriding any existing files with the same name, but you can obviously rename it after it has been uploaded. So that is what I wanted to show you, and I hope that you find it as cool as I find it, because I'm completely happy with it. Amanda, I don't know if there are like any questions.
Hey, Don. We've had actually a ton of questions coming in that your coworkers have been answering behind the scenes, but
Thanks,
one that kept
guys.
coming up was regarding OneDrive support or Google Drive support.
Yeah, well, those are questions which we could have expected, and we are investigating which providers we're going to use because we have been starting with these three. We've got a lot of questions for particularly Azure Blob Storage. And Dropbox is a nice one also to see how that kind of stuff is going, because as you might have noticed, the Dropbox one and the Amazon/Azure ones are slightly different. And we wanted to do both kinds, and yeah, we will check out what is possible. And obviously OneDrive is cool as well, and Google Drive as well, but we are investigating what kind of services we are providing. But we have been setting up a good base now, so yeah, it's in the possibilities.
Okay, from Eric, how do my clients set their Dropbox folder in my application?
Okay, yeah, that was what I was talking about. There are like two flavors of Dropbox. The one that we have been doing, which we have implemented in the file manager, is connected to a fixed Dropbox storage. But for instance, if you want to upload a file from out of your Dropbox, your personal Dropbox account, then you would need like the OAuth authentication, and the visitor would need to approve the Dropbox app to access the files, etc. And that is slightly different. But as you can see, I've got a GitHub account set up, and the prototypes that I have been making for the initial webinar are hosted there, and the Dropbox provider there is doing the OAuth. So that means that you can ask a visitor to access his Dropbox account and do something with the files. And you can test it out. You can just get it from GitHub, build it, and see how it works. It's pretty straightforward. It is not like as integrated as this, but there is a little README with it. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Is it possible to access cloud storage from ASP.NET MVC? And if it is possible, could you provide any sample code or codings?
I have to take a look at my colleagues. I think it is just implemented in the MVC file manager as well. Yeah, because the file manager for MVC is based upon the code of the one that I was just showing you. And I'll make sure that we will set up, I'll do a blog post with a demo of the MVC one. And I will put it up somewhere this week.
And that's it.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and for the questions. And I hope you enjoyed it and that you will start using this cool stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Don. All right, everybody, you can register for all of our upcoming webinars and watch past webinar recordings at devexpress.com/webinars. Next week, Tuesday, December 16th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Responsive Web Design with DevExpress, presented by Web Program Manager Mehul Harry. We do have webinars scheduled already into 2015, so check them out and register today. All right, that is it for this one. Thank you so much to Don. Thank you for joining us. And of course, thank you for choosing DevExpress. Bye-bye.